All right, today we're cracking open a fascinating case file. It's all about crippling ankle arthritis, a really old problem, and a very modern suspect, a total ankle replacement called the Salto Talaris. And this really gets us to the heart of the matter, the question that anyone would ask before this kind of life-changing surgery. Can an artificial joint, especially one that takes a beating like your ankle, actually stand the test of time? Now, to get why this is such a big deal, you have to understand the stakes. For millions of people, severe ankle arthritis isn't just a little ache. No, it turns the simple act of walking into a constant, painful challenge. That kind of pain, day in and day out, has pushed doctors and engineers to search for a real, lasting solution. But like with a lot of medical breakthroughs, the road to getting it right, well, it hasn't been a straight line. The very first attempts at total ankle replacements, those first-gen models, they just didn't work all that well. Honestly, they got a reputation for high failure rates, and that created a huge amount of skepticism, for good reason. It really set the stage for something new. But of course, technology doesn't stand still, and that brings us to a new suspect in our investigation, the modern ankle replacement, which just might be a total game changer in this whole story. And our prime suspect is this, the Salto Talaris implant. It's part of a whole new generation of design, one that's built on a much better understanding of how the ankle actually moves. And it promised to finally turn the page on all those early failures. So the big question is that just a promise? Or is there some real, hard evidence to back it up? Well, to find out, we are digging into the largest study ever done at a single hospital on this very implant. Let's see what the data actually says. So how do you put a medical implant on trial? Well, you follow hundreds of patients for years and years. Let's dig into exactly how these researchers gathered their evidence. Okay, first things first, we need to know what we're measuring. And in this world, success is measured by something called survivorship. It's a really simple but powerful idea. What percentage of these implants are still doing their job without needing to be surgically replaced? The way they investigated this was actually pretty straightforward. They took a really big group, we're talking 518 patients who all got this Salto Talaris implant, and they just tracked them for over 7 years on average. The main goal? Just count one thing: how many of those implants survived without needing another major surgery. And so, after all those years of collecting data, the evidence is finally in, and the verdict is ready. Let's take a look at what this massive investigation actually uncovered. This is it, the moment of truth. After all that time, all that tracking, all that analysis, how did the Salto Talaris actually do out in the real world? There's your headline, 97%. So what does that number mean? That's the implant's survivorship rate. Or, to put it another way, after about 7 years of walking, climbing, just living life, 97 out of every 100 of these implants were still working exactly like they were supposed to. That is a pretty incredible track record. But wait, a good investigation looks at everything, right? So you've got to be asking, what about that other 3%? Why did that small handful of implants end up failing? Well, the evidence shows that out of all 518 patients, only 16 of them needed a do-over. And the reasons were split pretty evenly between two main culprits: infection, which is a risk with any implant surgery, and the parts just loosening up over time. But, an implant lasting a long time is really only half the story. I mean, durability is great, but what really, truly matters is the patient's quality of life. Did this surgery actually help people feel better and get back to their lives? And here, the impact on people was just as dramatic. The researchers used a standard scale to track how well patients could function. And before the surgery, the average score was pretty low. It reflected a real daily struggle. But after the surgery, that score more than doubled. That shows a massive improvement in everyday stuff, like just walking around or climbing stairs. Now here's where it gets interesting. Tucked away in the data was a finding that's pretty surprising. You'd probably guess that patients with a higher body mass index, or BMI, would put more stress on the implant, right? And maybe be more likely to need a revision. Well, the study found the exact opposite. The small group of patients who needed a second surgery actually had a significantly lower average BMI than the ones who didn't. A totally unexpected twist.
So, after looking at the hard numbers on survivorship, the real-world patient outcomes, and even some of those surprising details, it is time. Let's close the case file and deliver the final verdict.
And you know what? We don't have to interpret the verdict ourselves. The researchers put it in black and white. They concluded that this implant showed excellent mid to long-term survivorship and significant improvements in how well patients could function. So when we finally close this case file, what's the bottom line? The evidence really points to three huge takeaways. First, this implant is highly reliable. Second, it gives people a real, measurable improvement in their quality of life. And third, this isn't just a small sample size. This conclusion is based on major evidence from the largest study of its kind, which gives these findings some serious weight. And all of that leaves us with one last big question. When you have evidence this strong, showing that an implant is both incredibly durable and has a profound impact on people's lives, have we just seen the data that establishes a new gold standard for treating severe ankle arthritis? The evidence, I've got to say, makes a very compelling case.